if you want to gain the competitiveness, you need to be pragmatic and you need to understand also, who are your partners. And usually the partners are defined by the values. You can't really cooperate successfully with somebody, who has a completely different mindset. For me, the values and cooperation, again, if we're talking about the projects, when you build a consortium, you build the consortium on the fundamental values. And the main fundamental values for consortia is trust.
It's trust.
Welcome to the Insider Podcast, where we dive into the latest buzz in EU research and innovation. In this episode, Ricardo Miguez sits down with Tadas Tumènas, head of Lithuania's R&I Liaison office. They explore Lithuania's strengths in digital innovation, the challenges ahead, and what's next for the EU R&I scene. Plus, you'll hear about Lithuania's take on the upcoming FP10 and the push for more funding, critical tech, and wider EU participation. Let's jump in.
Hello, Tadas Tumènas, head of LINO, the Lithuanian R&I Liaison office in Brussels. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and we are here to go through the preliminary Lithuanian position on the 10th European R&I Framework Program, which will start in 2028 and go through to 2034. But before that, Tadas, how are you?
Hello, Ricardo. And first of all, thank you for having me here in your podcast. It's a pleasure for me to be, and of course, to share my experience and also opinion about our FP10 position paper. Well, I'm doing fine. Everything is fine. It's summer, and summer in Brussels is pretty slow, so we can prepare for a busy autumn. So this is what I'm doing right now.
Ah, excellent. You are already preparing for autumn. Autumn has arrived already in Brussels, I assume, but that's another story.
Yes.
That is, I've mentioned already, you're the head of the Lithuanian R&I Liaison office in Brussels. But your CV is quite of an experienced and I would say distinguished professional in this domain. You have worked already in strengthening European research cooperation and particularly integrating Lithuanian researchers into international networks in several positions. And now you lecture on innovation policy and management at Mykolas Romeris University. It's very interesting. I would like to know a little bit more about that. It's one of my areas of particular interest. So walk us through your experience. How did you get to where you are, and why? I mean, it's such a niche area, isn't it?
Well, that's a good question, actually. Indeed, thank you, of course, for noticing my experience. And in general, I've been working in the domain of innovation for more than 10 years now, taking different positions, of course. I've started at the ministry, at Innovation Division. At the time, it was still the Ministry of Economy. Then, with some transformations, when innovation became kind of trendy and buzzword, not only in Lithuania, but all over Europe, our ministry became the Ministry of Innovation and Economy, of course. So I was also leading one of the units responsible for innovation policy. Then, of course, I had some, travels and spent some time in Brussels. So I worked also for the presidency in 2013, which was not directly related to innovation, but it was basically in the domain of space, which is kind of, one of the areas where the innovation pops up. So anyway, it's not that far from innovation.
Very directly. In fact, the people I have worked with along the years, and I have never worked directly in the presidency, but I have contributed to several dimensions of it from the research and innovation point of view. The people that I have worked with, Luis Enrique, Carlos Santos, and others, and Pont many years ago, all of them left that period in need of a holiday that was as long as the presidency. It was like a really, really intense period.
Well, indeed, it was a very intense period, but also it was a lot of learning also, for personal perspective and in general, getting the knowledge how EU is functioning and having in mind that it was the first Lithuanian presidency. So, of course, for us, it was indeed something new, so we had to kind of react and also deal with different challenges. But I think all in all, the presidency went pretty well. And also I could be very proud because as I said, I was dealing with a space policy at that time. So I was a deputy head of a space working party. And during our presidency, we actually finished the negotiations on Copernicus. So, yeah, so you can imagine it was kind of, a bit of a roller coaster. But yeah.
There's a sense of achievement, isn't it? So it's excellent.
I'm kind of proud of that as well. So I usually mention this. And sometimes people do ask me, what is this Copernicus? It's a famous scientist. No, not exactly. I mean,
well, also,
but also, yes. And yeah, so after that, I came back again to Lithuania. I dealt mainly with the EU matters, was covering industrial policy as well. So I'm kind of familiar not only from the research side when it comes to innovation, but also from the industrial point of view. And after some time, I realized that I would like to try myself, in the private sector. So I went to work for the industry. And at that time, I started to deal with another interesting topic, which is digitalization. So cybersecurity, AI, data. So these were the buzzwords that, of course, not only the buzzwords, but actually really interesting domains.
Can I just ask you there, when you worked for industry in those particular topics, was it from the policy perspective? Was it like industrial actors that were, or a particular company that was interested in reading better what was happening? What was the scope?
Yeah, the scope was very direct, I would say. I mean, because these were the companies of the manufacturing industry which had to apply the legal acts and all the goals that the EU is setting, to understand and put them in practice. So basically, it was kind of being on the other side of the barricades, as I say, trying, to explain to the industry what is written in the acts and, and on the other hand, vice versa, from the industry point of view, explain to the politicians, what industry needs. So, yeah, it was pretty challenging. It was interesting. And at some point, I got the proposal, to come back to research, closer to research. And here I am. I mean, now I'm the head of Lithuanian R&I Liaison office. And of course, as many offices in the EU, we are, as I always say, like this non-official promotion, of Lithuanian positions and also organization of different events, promotion of Lithuanian research and innovation ecosystem in the EU. So because for us, we are a small country and we see internationalization and also international cooperation as a tool, to reach more competitiveness and also to attract more investments.
Mm-hmm. That's the perfect bridge to talk a little bit about Lithuania and the state of play of Lithuania in the EU R&I landscape. So Lithuania has been increasingly active and participating in EU R&I programs, mainly Horizon Europe. And I would say from the analysis, the very short analysis I've made, that the digital component and the digital skills in particular are of a particular focus, and there is also a focus on the venture capital component and the public-private partnership. So a lot of bridging between knowledge creation and market uptake here in the activity. But then How do you see that that state of play of current Lithuanian participation in Horizon Europe and in the framework program in general, and what would you say are the main challenges ahead?
Well, I would say, looking back, in the days when I was still also working with this policy directly, I say that we have had quite a major improvement. You can also look at the Horizon statistics. If you look at the Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe right now, you can see that already, at this stage where Horizon Europe is, we already received more money than from the whole Horizon 2020. So I think this already shows something that, Lithuanian research and innovation ecosystem is kind of booming in a way that there is a understanding that you need to collaborate, you need to be open, you need to be involved in different projects, and in this way you also, contribute to the whole EU innovation and research ecosystem, but also you boost yours. So I guess that's the main issue. What has happened in those past years is the change of the mindset, I would say. The mindset that in the beginning, because I was also dealing with Horizon 2020, in the beginning, of course, the stakeholders were looking at it like, okay, it's not our program. It's quite far away. It's very competitive. It's difficult, to win something. So why do we need to participate there? Why do we need also, to spend our time and money also, to draft those tenders that are not getting any benefits for us? Another issue, of course, for Lithuania was the structural support money. I mean, on one hand, it was a good thing for the country, to develop its own infrastructure, to boost also the research and innovation capabilities. But on the other hand, as I see it right now, it was a little bit of the obstacle, for our researchers and innovators to go one step further. So, and that step further was Horizon 2020 at that time, and also Horizon Europe.
There's so much to unpack there, Tadas, because this is a problem that is transversal to, I would say, all the countries that receive structural funds and that have an already struggling or even if growing research and innovation community. If you have guaranteed local money, even if it comes from Europe, why go to the European program? Putting it very bluntly, that was one of the main issues that all of us had to deal with, and it's not easy. And it's only we can only overcome that with time and persistence. But Lithuania has, according to its statistics, a very high population with tertiary education and strong linkages with innovation and a kind of an entrepreneurial culture. But it still shows a lot of problems with related indicators like the commercialization of research outputs. So there's a lot of challenges there. There's a lot of unpack to do. I would like us to relate this to the Lithuanian position paper and see how this landscape of Lithuanian as a country that is strongly educated with an already robust entrepreneurial ecosystem as much as it can for European standards, of course, and we know what that means. But how does that translate into what your Ministry of Education, Science and Sport is now putting in its position paper? What is your vision for the next framework program? So I don't know if you want to comment anything before we go into the main message of the position paper.
Well, I think I would like to comment or to follow up what you said. I mean, because this knowledge valorization, or let's say the transition from research to commercial part, to services and products, I guess it's the issue not only in Lithuania, it's the general issue in the EU, and we are not different from that. I mean, we are trying on the national level to implement different measures, of course, to advance and to uptake, the knowledge. But at the same time, it's also on the business side, to understand that, they need this new knowledge because, as you are aware, innovation sometimes can be created not only with using a new knowledge, but just, having some experience or buying something from the outside. So the main challenge indeed is to show that, for breakthrough innovations and for the competitive innovations, you need new knowledge. And I guess this is also the backbone of our position paper, because if you start reading the position paper, you can immediately understand that we are talking there about the knowledge creation and the EU technological advancement, so which goes hand in hand, because without the new knowledge, you can't be technologically advanced as well. So I guess this is where we are coming from, and we understand science and research as a tool for the competitive, not only Lithuania, but for the competitive EU as such.
Yeah, but that's what we all see, but then there are people with a lot of different views that see that we can reach that competitiveness through a higher investment in fundamental research in a very open, bottom-up approach. And then there are other people that see that, on the contrary, this is the European level funding, so you need some directionality, which is the word of the moment, to say that there is a political priority, that the funding needs to be aligned with that political priority, and therefore you need to see results directly contributing to the objectives laid out in that political priority, which takes us to a higher investment in usually what people call higher TRL or applied research. So where does the paper stand? Because it wasn't clear for me.
Well, honestly, you can't have higher TRLs without having lower TRLs, can you?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. That's my point. And this is what we are trying to say also in our position paper, that, we need FP10, which provides more funding for knowledge creation through promotion of fundamental, also called, blue sky research. Because in this case, this type of research often explores, new ideas, new theories, you name it, that may not generate, tangible benefits right now, right here. But for the future of Europe, for the future of our competitiveness, we need them, because we don't know what we're going to use, in the future, what kind of research we're going to use. I mean, this was also a good case with the COVID vaccines, that were also kind of, this method was stuck in the laboratories, but when, it was needed, suddenly people remembered, that things were done and we can use it. So that's where we stand, when it comes to, let's say, fundamental research. And we see it as a let's say, as a gasoline, for the innovation.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about that. But so what you see as Lithuania is a continuation of what has been done, but with fine-tuning to do it better. So a continuation of a balanced approach to funding. You are happy with the current balance of funding between this fundamental and applied? Do you think this is the correct way of putting things? How would you comment on that?
I would say that, we are not exactly happy with the situation of the fundamental research and in general with the research actions, in in the Horizon Europe. That's why, in FP9, when it comes to FP10, that's why we are proposing, inclusion of research action, which, and also we are proposing the continuation of ERC and other pillars that are important, for this blue type of a research, that we are talking about.
So, what is a research action? That was one of the points that is not completely clear. So, could you help me understand what does it mean? The phrase Lithuania suggests introducing research actions in the FP10.
Well, as you know, in the current Horizon Europe, we have two types of action: research and innovation action and innovation action. Mm-hmm. So research and innovation action for some of the universities, and that the majority, well, not the majority, the big amount of institutions that I apply, for the Horizon Europe are universities. So in order to write a correct tender, and to somehow to justify, your innovation, it's kind of very difficult for research institution, which is not doing innovation itself, which is actually just fueling the innovation. So why do we need, to have this research and innovation action, and why don't we just put it research action, for those kind of bodies, that are doing just research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the research and innovation cycle has a lot to it, right? And if you have institutions that are focused on what you called the research component, they might be universities. I would argue they might also be other entities that are not just universities. A company might be.
Took university as an example. I'm talking about the entity who is just into the research, but they are not exploring this any further. And then in the tender, you need to justify somehow, how you're going to continue, with the innovation, when basically most of us understand that, this entity doesn't do innovation as such. They just somebody else takes it and explores further.
But doesn't that argue for more collaboration between different types of entities that have those different types of capacities and skills that will take us through the whole research and innovation cycle?
Well, this is exactly what we are also saying in our position paper, saying that we need a smaller project with more partners included. So this is what we were talking from the beginning, and the idea, of involving more partners, not only just, like 3 minimum partners, but just increase this number, perhaps to 5, which gives also the, and also financing more smaller projects, instead of just, financing bigger projects, would also give the choice for EU to choose the best solution for certain challenge.
But isn't that an argument that is usually put forth by countries and entities that find it difficult to position themselves competitively to lead those bigger projects? Because I've been on that side as well, in the sense of, we do prefer smaller projects, we do prefer more targeted approaches in that sense, but with maybe with consortia that covers the whole R&I value chain, for example.
Yeah, I understand this argument. Of course, I heard it myself many times as well. This is the argument that the bigger countries are putting forward. And again, everyone is looking from their own perspective. But let's say, if you are putting public money to solve some kind of challenge, what would you like to get? What kind of proposals would you like to get for solving this challenge? Would you like to get just one proposal? Or would you like to have 3 proposals and then choose out of those 3 proposals, which is the best one?
So what you're saying is that you should increase competitiveness. You're not saying that we should have a more program management type of approach to the proposals that are chosen for funding, right? Because there might be, it's 2 completely different approaches. One is we increase the number of proposals by having that are funded by reducing the maximum size of the budget or something like that. And the other one is, okay, let's see if what we need. We have a challenge to solve, and we need someone to address this part of the challenge, or maybe a few consortia to address this part of the challenge, and then the other part and the other part, and so forth. So what's your view on that?
Again, there are 2 sides of the coin. I mean, it depends how you look at it. Because how am I looking at this? I don't look at this as an increasing competition. I would say I'm looking at this as a increasing possibility to, and also an increasing choice, and increasing the possibility for entities to participate in the FP10. As such, I'm not looking at it as a increasing competitiveness. Of course, I mean, you can look also from that angle. You might say, okay, if you are asking for more entities to participate, if you're asking for smaller projects, which increases then competition. But on the other hand, aren't we aiming for the excellency? Aren't we aiming, for the best solution? So how can we aim for the best solution if we have just one consortium, which is proposing one solution for you?
No, that's very clear. That's very clear. I think that's very clear. So we can move on to the main topics of the position paper, the other main topics of the position paper, beyond this component of balance between the fundamental and applied, which is the one you introduce head on. But then you go into issues such as international cooperation and this is and others that I want to go through with you, like enlargement and missions and widening. Let's start with the international cooperation. This is extremely interesting at the moment because we need to balance international cooperation, openness with security, or what we call the strategic autonomy, and especially in science policies. So what is the message that the Lithuanian entities and the government have about this issue?
Well, I think the main message is already written in one of the first sentences, which is actually says that we should follow the principle as open as possible, as close as necessary. Because, as you know, the current situation when wars are taking place, and we are also witnessing the increasing attacks on academic freedom, so Europe must be more cautious. Therefore, we acknowledge and support the developments towards the research security. And to stay competitive and secure, we cannot continue claiming that all publicly funded research results and data must be open by default. So I just want to underline, the last two words, by default, because, for example, maybe the research in the field of critical technologies or dual-use technologies must be closed and opened only after making sure that it does not harm our competitiveness edge or some kind of security protocols. So that's the main idea, of this paragraph in our position paper.
Mm-hmm. But that is a generality, because it is something that we all tend to agree with. We tend to agree that we need to be cautious. We can't pass on critical information that it is for our benefit and cannot be for the benefit of people that want us bad. The issue is, at the moment, in the geopolitical momentum that we are living, what does that mean for international cooperation in concrete terms? Are we to reinforce cooperation with certain areas of the world and in certain topics or thematic areas specifically, or think and our competitiveness with a global dimension? Or are we to think our competitiveness with a much more inward-looking perspective and continue this selective, very, very selective and slow approach towards the international cooperation dynamic?
Well, I would say, it's pretty clear what we said from the practical also point of view. Yes, you can say it's a general approach that we put there, but, if you read till the end, you can see that we are also proposing to revise, the open science policy as such. For this kind of reason. Secondly, when you mentioned, how closely we should cooperate, the answer is also there. We are saying that, we would like close cooperation with EU partners that adhere to the EU fundamental values and principles. So I guess this is pretty clear what we are talking about.
Is it, or is it? So you are mixing the international cooperation with the values dimension, and by values I mean all the more ethical and human rights related values, and not aligning that international cooperation with a more pragmatic approach towards the gaining of competitiveness.
This is exactly what we are talking about, that actually if you want to gain the competitiveness, you need to be pragmatic and you need to understand also, who are your partners, and usually the partners are defined by the values. You can't really cooperate successfully with somebody, who has a completely different mindset. For me, the values and cooperation, again, if we're talking about the projects, when you build a consortium, you build the consortium on the fundamental values. And the main fundamental values for consortia is trust.
It's trust.
Exactly. So it's the same, when it comes to international cooperation. So how can you trust somebody who has completely different values? So there is no mix here. This is actually a correlation, because otherwise you can't cooperate successfully on the international level.
There would be a lot more to unpack and to go into depth, because then we would have to start discussing who is defining who has what values and why, and
well, of course, this is a philosophical debate. I mean, we can have a separate podcast on on in general, what is the value as such, and then continue from there.
Yeah. No, I wasn't talking about philosophy. I was talking more about perception, real perception that we have about certain parts of the world. But it's very clear. It's very clear. Thank you for that. I think it helped also bridging with the other key component in your position paper, which is enlargement. And I think you have been very, very clear in saying that it is necessary, and I'm quoting, that FP10 develops tailor-made integration measures for new candidate countries, Ukraine and Moldova. All right, so this is obviously very important for all of us, for Lithuania, also because of its geopolitical position. Could you help us elaborate on that? Because the paragraph there is very short. I know it's also a very objective message, but could you help us elaborate on that?
I guess there is not really much elaboration on this, because the paragraph, as you said, is very short and very bold, I would say. And again, our geopolitical situation, our own experience, when we entered the EU, it was also kind of course, different in comparison to the Ukraine right now. But meaning that, having the situation in mind and the war happening in the Ukraine, needing, to restore the Ukraine, and also at the same time, participating in the future framework programs. They need to be competitive to participate there. They need to have this excellence as well. So in this case, of course, in order to somehow, soften this integration into the European research area, you need to have tailor-made integration measures for those new candidate countries.
Okay. Yeah, but that raises questions about what should the focus of the EU enlargement in the future be. What Lithuania is saying is that for us the focus should be Ukraine and Moldova. There are other pending situations that are also very critical, not only because they have some bellic dimensions, but also because they have even more years of historical application to the EU. So this is a very clear-cut message. I don't think it is up to us to discuss it here, but I think we need to put it in context of the wider challenge of enlargement.
I agree, but again, I guess every country, has its own priorities. It has their own foreign policy. And here, I can't speak, about Lithuanian foreign policy because I'm not the expert. But in general, what we mentioned here, of course, these, especially Ukraine, was always, among our priorities in the foreign policy. So it's not a secret. And I think everyone in the EU knows that. So we were always, kind of advocating for the Ukraine. And I guess, that's why, in our position paper, you'll have this kind of bold statement, which basically reflects also a little bit our foreign policy priorities at some point.
It makes it clear from the negotiating point of view where Lithuania is coming from and what will be its position. So that's very good. Now let's quickly address two issues that have been very, very debated along the last few months in the papers and in LinkedIn and etc. And among all of us in our meetings and project meetings, etc., which is the missions. They have been extremely criticized. Everybody I talk to, except for the ones that are directly involved in its implementation, and even those are very critical and think they should be profoundly reformed. Instead of myself saying what is in the paper, I would like you to tell us why Lithuania think that possibly the EU missions should be lifted out of the framework program and relaunched at the MFF level. And let me just say for the listeners that don't know these acronyms, of course, FP is framework program, but MFF is a multi-annual framework, financial framework.
So actually, you already mentioned that, in general, mission approach, of course, it holds a significant potential, but to achieve something tangible, it requires more time, and also it requires a lot of efforts. And what we see right now, the missions already been, at least they are trying to be implemented for some time now, and we don't see quite, tangible results or goals. On the other hand, the question can be addressed also how those goals and achievements were, set. Because for some missions, for example, for cancer mission, how to cure the whole Europe from cancer, it sounds a little bit, and really unreachable. But anyway, I'm a little bit exaggerating here, but in general, as I mentioned, member states has an even level of participating of those missions and in the implementation of those missions, also struggling to be incorporated into national policies and accepting by the public as well, especially by the private sector, because I guess you also had a couple of questions from the private sector, so what's the added value for me to participate in this mission, because it's not clear what I'm getting. So am I getting just a label, that I'm participating in the mission, or what is it about?
Isn't that one of the main criticisms that have been made of the missions, is that it's been too wide? And even so, you say that we are not all participating in the same way. There are very different levels of implementation, but the missions have been opened to the whole of the stakeholders across the union. And on the other hand, the criticism also highlights that this is about science and innovation and results. So if it is about science and innovation and results, and as you say, requires time, persistence, and continuation, why do it through the framework program at European level?
I can tell you why, because you just said why. Because it requires wide participation. Because if you want to have a wide participation from different ministries, let's start from the public sector, from the different ministries, from different stakeholders, it can't be just in the frame of the new framework program. First thing. Secondly, research component is just one of the components of those missions. So if we are just hiding behind the research component and keeping missions in the framework program, then everyone again is looking at DGRTD, or the ministries of science and education, you name it, in every country, and saying like, okay, so why are you not delivering? Nobody is taking the ownership of the mission, because the ownership of the mission shouldn't be just one ministry or one DG. It should be, in general, the whole public sector, the whole stakeholders. So that's the idea, why we are saying that the missions perhaps should be lifted out of the FP and relaunched at MFF level. And we are thinking that this approach might facilitate pooling necessary resources from all sectoral EU, national and regional programs, so enabling the EU missions to achieve their goals and deliver.
It's a possible path, no doubt.
It's just a proposal. We are not saying that, you should, you must do it. That's why, we use should.
No, absolutely. I'm just trying to, of course, as we all are, fortunately, we only have the power of proposing, because otherwise we would be in a very, very different regime. And that's why we have this benefit of discussing. And what I'm here trying to understand is, this is a possible path, and I'm generally trying to think if this would be also feasible at MFF level, or if we just don't just have to rethink the way that the whole of this funding and governance scheme is being implemented, or if this is the right way to achieve the goals that we are trying to achieve.
Look, I think feasibility depends on the political will.
Words of the wise. No doubt. We only do what we are allowed to do. That's something I've learned a long time ago. Let's go on to EIT, and let's try to be very objective about this one. You say that, and let me see if I understand correctly, in your position paper, that there should be a limited number of partnerships, and so there should be clear strategies for phasing out underperforming partnerships, including EIT kicks. So you were talking about EIT, you were talking about European partnerships in general, and so you are talking about introducing a impact assessment methodology?
Well, yes and no. The idea why we are touching upon the partnerships, I guess you know that it's not a secret that basically every year, the number of European partnerships is increasing, so like if we had 49 or whatever, now I don't even know the exact number, how many partnerships do we have? And we still have a big list, like partnerships waiting to be approved. So my question, and not only my question, but also the question from Lithuania is, so how many partnerships do Europe need? And, are they not overlapping each other? Because sometimes, you can see from the title of certain partnerships, that they could be easily, put under another partnership, and then, you diminish also the number of the partnerships. Secondly, we were talking with the stakeholders. And of course, when we were asking stakeholders, tell us your experience, with the partnerships. So everyone was a bit confused, because nobody could really say the exact number of partnerships. Nobody really could say what are the exact benefits that they are getting from it. Some of the people said, yes, we are participating in this partnership or in that, but besides their own partnership where they are participating, they don't know it. So the question is, what is then the added value of those partnerships? Why we keep creating and why we keep producing those partnerships, and basically the landscape is becoming more complex for the stakeholders to understand, where they should participate. And also from the smaller member state perspective, it's managing all the partnerships and participating in each partnership, it's becoming a burden as well. So the idea why we are talking about the partnerships that, we should limit the number is actually, from the really practical point of view.
Yeah, but the issues are many, and the big argument, I can see where you're coming from, but the big argument is for also creating a co-creation and co-responsibility and co-funding of different types of stakeholders. That's why they are called partnerships. But
I'm not even going there. I'm just starting really from the very practical approach. If we are going deeper into the partnership, there are plenty of problems there. And also, with the IT kicks, when we are talking, about the added value that is being created from that, so nobody really knows.
I agree, but I think this would be the one question I would like to take you up on a different podcast, because honestly, when you question the added value of partnerships, then that makes me, from a neutral point of view, question what is the added value of many other things. Because if you set the standard at in one certain way for one type of instrument, then let's set the standard for all instruments and say, what is the added value? How are we measuring that added value? And why are we measuring it that way?
So we are now basically naturally coming to the instrument which is called widening as well, So how the added value is measuring there. Because
Absolutely.
This is what we are also asking, to see what are the results, when we can see that, after being in the widening part, you can say that, okay, this is now over. You are an excellent partner. You can go further, so what is the mechanism there? Because, we don't have those basically results, what is the impact, of the widening instrument. So I'm already switching now between the other instruments
you're right.
As you said, we are being quite coherent in the position paper because we are looking from the perspective of added value of those instruments, different instruments, because partnership is an instrument as well as such, So EIT is an instrument, widening is an instrument, so the same question applies, throughout the position paper, what is the added value creation, and how can we increase this added value? Because we are talking about the public money that, the EU is spending, and you can't spend just public money for the sake of spending. You need to create something. And in absolutely. This case, you need to create the competitive edge.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is the right moment to transition into the widening question, because to close the last point, I just get the feeling that the more and more people I hear talking about these things, partnerships, kicks, and etc., and whatever we're talking about, every instrument actually, I feel. And actually, my institution, this comes from discussions I've had inside my institution as well, is that we do not have an adequate impact assessment methodology within the framework program for everything. Okay, so this is something. So let's transition into widening, and let's into what you call in your paper broadening participation. And you address it from a interesting perspective, because you call for closing the existing R&I gaps as a prerequisite. That's surely what we all want. We want the capacity to mobilize all the actors across Europe and answer the challenges that jointly answer the challenges that we are all faced with. Then you bring in the security and open strategic autonomy into this broadening participation discussion. And I would like to ask you why? Why is it here that you bring in this security and open and strategic autonomy? And don't you also think that for closing the gap, you need not widening but deepening, which means, in my understanding, that the recognition that Lithuanian entities are excellent. Not all of them, of course, as not all the Germans, as not all the Portuguese, right? So this deepening would be creating the best conditions to mobilize all entities to address joint problems in a different type of approach. So tell me, what is the position that Lithuania is coming from with this part on broadening participation?
You said very well. Because in Lithuania, we do have excellent research, and we don't really need, to prove to somebody that, we have it. participating in Horizon Europe doesn't really mean that, you have excellent research, because you can have excellent research without even look, we have researchers that are working, with Japan, with US, with different countries, and they never wanted to participate in Horizon Europe.
Which also does not mean that they are excellent, does it? It also means that they collaborate with the US and Japan. What I'm saying here, Tadas, is like, okay, let's focus, because that's again another podcast.
Yeah, I know, but that's why I'm challenging a little bit also myself, because when I hear, this definition excellence, so what is excellence? Do you have a definition in the EU? What is excellent research?
I know, I fully agree. You're asking me, I fully agree with you, but to have a definition.
So we are all being subjective, like as you said, if you are cooperating with Japan and US, does it mean that it's excellent? But I can also say the same, that, it doesn't mean that it's not excellent. So, what I'm trying to say, that in the Horizon Europe, so coming back to our position paper, when we are talking about, broadening participation, we see it as a tool how to overcome R&I gaps. And, it was also mentioned in the different commission papers, and it was finally acknowledged, that Europe is not as single as it might look like, because different regions, have different innovation capacities and different innovative developments. So how to address that? We think that, by broadening participation, and also while including more and more entities from different countries, we can also ensure the resilient, secure, and open Europe. As much as possible, it can be open. So that's why, where resilience, security, and open strategic autonomy comes in. Because in order to achieve this goal, to be resilient, to be secure, and to have an open strategic autonomy, you need to include everyone. Because if you don't include other players, and you are just constantly focused, on just, the usual suspects, as I say, you are not really ensuring those kind of values.
That's very clear, and I fully agree with that. And that's a very good perspective on inclusiveness and on broadening. I think that is something that we miss, and that is why I was saying that we need to deepen. We need to consider Lithuanian, Portuguese, or Greek, French, and German excellent at the same level, and then address the challenges in a inclusive way, building resilience and guaranteeing our strategic autonomy. And let's not mix that now with the internationalization debate, which was something that would go very naturally from here. And let's try to address some of the other issues that you've pinpointed in your position. And one of them that caught my eye, it's two of them. But at least one is that to leverage cost potential to enhance networking opportunities across FP10. This is of course you talk about the young generation of researchers and newcomers in general. Is cost really a valuable entry point as it is? Do you consider it is functioning well for Lithuanian entities?
In our experience, I think cost is one of the instruments, again, that it's increasing this internationalization, and also participation of especially younger researchers in those international innovation networks. So we believe that, yes, cost is important, and that's why, we highlighted this in our position paper. And again, we highlighted this also from the perspective of a young generation and young researchers, because this is the first step, how they can basically, as a researcher, you can also be exposed to this international collaboration.
Okay. So last but not least, you talk very, very, very briefly. You use somewhere in your paper, don't know where anymore, but dual use expression. Oh yeah, dual use potential is vital, but you speak very little about it. Is Lithuania going to increase its investment in defense and link it to the position or to the activities in research and innovation? And how do you see the new industrial defense and defense policy in general being coming into and contributing into the research and innovation world?
Well, I guess it won't be a surprise again for you, knowing our geopolitical situation. But of course, we are, in favor of dual use and also in favor of this defense industry, because in Lithuania now we have a lot of attention given to the promotion of defense industry as such. So, of course, dual use is also important for us. And that's why, we are saying in the position paper, dual use potential is vital. However, by saying this, we still think that, the dual use, the position of dual use, in FP10 still must be discussed and coordinated also across the MFF. So we don't have the exact answer. There were the public consultations, of course, on dual use with 3 scenarios, which scenario we would like to support or we won't like to support. For us, at that time, we didn't have enough evidence from the Commission, to somehow to support one or the second or the third one, because this needs to be analyzed. If we are going to put dual use, in the Horizon Europe, so then, of course, there are lots of questions, so how are you going to assess that, also the competences that are needed, to distinguish also different clearances and things like that, because originally Horizon Europe is a civil program, so, all those kind of different things that needs to be addressed. And at that time, in the public consultation, in the paper, it was not clear, how the Commission is going to deal with it.
No, but there's a different program coming up for defense and for industrial policy related with defense that will most likely touch upon dual use.
But we shouldn't also exempt the fact that some projects, perhaps in the Horizon Europe, might be also applicable in not only in the civil domain but also in the military domain. So how are we going to deal with that? Are we going to close the eyes, and ignore this fact? Or, how are we going to proceed? As I said, for us, dual use is important.
Yeah, no, objectiveness in this very volatile world that we are living is increasingly important, and not closing our eyes for sure, or putting our hand on the sand is really, really, really crucial. I fully agree with you there. And so I think we've reached our goal. We've gone through the main messages in the preliminary Lithuanian position, and so I just would like to ask you, why is this preliminary?
It's a simple answer. Because we don't have a draft on the table, how FP10 will look like in the future. So our position paper might change.
Okay. Now, thank you so much for coming and for being here and discussing this paper with me. I think there are, as usual, many more questions to address, and we will surely be seeing each other again and going in depth into some issues. I think Lithuania is an extremely interesting and beautiful country. And so thank you again. We will see each other in Brussels and continue to fight for a competitive, cohesive Europe through research and innovation. Thank you, Tadas.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you for having me, and I hope that it was interesting for you also to talk. And I'm sure that our paths will cross again, and we're gonna have a chance to discuss perhaps already the draft FP10, which is going to be put on the table next year, hopefully.
Thank you.